All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in to another live streaming broadcast here on the Sailor Jack's Barbell Garage Facebook page. I want to thank you for taking the time out on your weekend to listen to me blabber about training and things that I'm passionate about. Hopefully, if you're tuning in, you too are passionate about training and optimal performance, or optimizing your performance. So thanks for tuning in. Also, I want to take this opportunity to send a quick shout out to @MobilityWOD on Twitter, or Kelly Starrett. The dude started following me today. I'm a big fan of his work. I've been a big fan of his work for a long time. Anything and everything that I do with regards to banded distraction and mobilization has a direct influence from Dr. Kelly Starrett. So for those of you who are watching this Facebook Live broadcast and are not following along with the Supple Leopard, Dr. Kelly Starrett, do so. I encourage you to take a look for his work on YouTube, or take a look on Twitter at some of the posts that he makes. Brilliant guy, awesome mind, and all about optimal performance, which is what we're talking about today. So without any further ado, let's get into what we are covering today. We're talking about running, and we're talking about kettlebell and kettlebell sport performance specifically. So a couple of things to understand to make today's workout, or to give today's workout rather, a little bit of context. Coming down the pipe in a couple of months, in October, we have the 1 hour long cycle challenge for autism, or Kettlebells for Autism, to develop awareness for autism research here in Canada. It's a worldwide global event that is done annually around October 15th typically. We all get together within the kettlebell community and do a 1 hour long cycle challenge for autism awareness. And again, its design is to raise awareness for this cause and raise money as well for research into this cause. So what you do is, either in a team of 4, you do 15 minutes long, 1 hour or 15 minute long cycle challenge, or as an individual, you do a 1 hour long cycle challenge. So in order to prep for the long cycle, you want to start working on your technique early on in the year, or give yourself a wide enough berth that you can start refining your technique and getting reacclimated to the kettlebells if you haven't used them in a long time, or get acclimated to the kettlebells for those of you that don't use kettlebells. And for those of you in the audience that aren't familiar with a long cycle or kettlebell sport, long cycle is essentially clean and jerk. So imagine doing a dumbbell clean to the shoulder and then a jerk and pressing up overhead. Or if you can think about it, for those of you who have weightlifting experience in the background, think about the Olympic clean and jerk. Since we have the Olympics in Rio going on right now, think about clean and jerk in the Olympics. Now imagine doing that for 15 minutes straight or 60 minutes straight. And that's exactly what the long cycle challenge is for autism awareness. So what we're doing today to get prepped for the 1 hour long cycle challenge is we're working hand insertion. So with kettlebells, we will just essentially do what the workout's calling for today is a 3-to-1 with a 1 minute rack hold. So essentially what we're gonna do is, for our hand insertion drills, we're just working at swinging the kettlebell and inserting the hand into the handle. I'll demonstrate that in a second, and hand the camera over to my father-in-law, but that will take place in just a second. So stay tuned and I'll show you that technique. So we do hand insertions, and then what we're gonna be working is a 3-to-1 clean and rack hold. So we're gonna do 3 swings, 1 clean, and then hold the rack position for 1 minute. And we're gonna repeat that throughout the duration of the workout. I think it was like 12 minutes or 18 minutes today. But essentially what we're doing is 3 and 1. So you do 3 swings, 1 clean, a 1 minute long rack hold in the position. And one thing to mention while I'm thinking about it too, that I forgot to mention from the top, is that you have the choice to compete either with 2 bells or 1 kettlebell. Typically in the kettlebell sport world, a long cycle is done with 2 kettlebells for male athletes and 1 kettlebell for female athletes. But with the 1 hour long cycle challenge, it is done with either your choice of 1 bell or 2 bells. So you have the choice as a male athlete to compete with 1 bell or 2 bells, and as a female athlete with 1 bell or 2 bells. So I forgot to mention that from the top, but you have the choice of doing 1 bell or 2 bells. So with your training, you want to make it specific to what you're going to be doing in the actual event. So if you have the intention of competing with 2 bells, then you want to do this drill with 2 bells. If you have the intention of doing it with 1 bell, then you want to do it with 1 bells. This is, of course, if you have experience using kettlebells or have previously competed with kettlebells and just need to get reacclimated to the bell. For those of you who are tuning in that are novice to kettlebells and may have not used kettlebells previously, then what you're going to want to do is to use 1 bell and start with 1 bell and work the technique with a hand insertion initially for the first 5 minutes of your training session today, and then work the hand insertion and clean drill and rack hold for the remainder of your 12-minute interval or whatever it is. And then of course we conclude the workout with a 12-minute long run. Now, the 12-minute run is designed to work on pace, restoration, and recovery. So we're not going balls to the walls with our 12-minute run. The idea is to last the entire 12 minutes. So what you're doing is you're searching for your pace with your run. I got this idea from the Tate Fletcher podcast. I was listening to him talk to, was it Tate Fletcher? What podcast was I listening to? I'm pretty sure it was Tate Fletcher. And the Pirate Radio podcast that I was listening to, he was talking to a gentleman named Chris Hinshaw, and Chris is affiliated with the CrossFit community, and he does the CrossFit aerobic capacitance stuff. So he's in charge of the CrossFit aerobic capacitance and looking at endurance and how to introduce endurance training to CrossFit athletes. And one of the things that I really liked about what Chris Hinshaw said is that as a coach, if you're dealing with athletes that may not like to run, so if you in the viewership are a person that admittedly doesn't like to run yourself, hey, you know what? Just start out and just slow jog. Just go nice and easy and use the run as a means of recovery and restoration. So just nice short distance, go out, do a light jog, and recover. Worry about lasting the entirety, there's a father-in-law in my background, worry about lasting the entirety of the 12 minutes. Don't worry about kicking ass and being able to cover a distance at this specific point. Let the goal be to just get out and run. So my suggestion to you is to either get a good podcast in your ears so that you can last that 12 minutes, or get some good tunes that you can listen to and run for that 12 minutes. And again, the goal isn't how much distance you can cover. The goal is to make sure that you can last the entirety of the 10 minutes at a slow jog, a comfortable pace, nice and easy. Worry about how much distance you cover after the fact, and then look at improving upon that distance. So this is an idea that I took from Chris Hinshaw. Again, he is the gentleman that is in charge of aerobic capacitance training within the CrossFit community. Great guy to look up, great guy to look into. For those of you that are looking, again, to improving your performance or optimizing your performance with running, just a suggestion there. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call on my father-in-law. I'm going to flip the camera around, and I'm just going to demonstrate the kettlebell hand insertion drill, and then I'm also going to demonstrate the kettlebell 3-in-1, so the clean and the the swing, the clean, and the rack hold. So I'm just going to flip the camera around, hand it to my dad, my father-in-law, my dad. Freudian slip. Not getting married till next year, so potential soon to be father-in-law. I don't know. I'm still waiting for my application for admission to the family to be cleared, so I'm still potentially the son-in-law at this point. Neither here nor there. But anyways, I'm gonna flip the camera around, and then we'll get into these hand insertions, and I can stop talking and I'll start training. Cheers. There you go. All right. Just a little fumble on the exchange there, but we're just gonna start with the hand insertion and the cleans. So head down to the kettlebells. So just a quick note before I start doing the drill. You can see that we have kettlebells of different color here. So again, for those of you in the audience that aren't familiar with what kettlebells are and what these different colors represent, the lighter colors at the front here are representing a lighter weight. So we go from a 10 kilogram kettlebell here in the front to 12 kilograms, 16, 20, 24s, and then there's a red kettlebell at the back, 32. So the weight increases with the change in color. What we have here is a kettlebell sport kettlebell. So the difference between a sport bell and a fitness bell, like this one here, is the circumference. So you can see this is a 16 kilogram kettlebell here. This is an 18 kilogram kettlebell within the fitness community. So you can see immediately that there's a couple of things that differ between a competition kettlebell and a fitness kettlebell. The fitness kettlebell, you can see there's an indent or a groove here. The circumference of the bell is different. So with fitness bells, as you increase in weight, the circumference of the bell will change. So the bell itself, as you move up in weight, will get larger. The good thing with competition kettlebells is that the circumference of the kettlebell stays consistent. It's the same whether you're at a 16 kilogram kettlebell or a lighter 10 kilogram kettlebell. The circumference of the bell is the same. So what this means is that as you move up and get stronger with kettlebells, you don't have to relearn or reteach your technique. Everything is the same. It stays consistent in terms of your technique with a kettlebell sport bell. So you don't have to waste time relearning the mechanics of your swing, your clean, your hand insertion, or your snatch, depending on what exercise you're doing with the kettlebell sport. So again, as I had said earlier in the video, there's three main competition lifts with kettlebells. There is the long cycle, there is the jerk, and then there is the kettlebell snatch. So just as a quick demo, I'm going to show those three exercises. So first, we've got our kettlebell long cycle, which is a clean to a rack position here, and then a jerk overhead. So that is the kettlebell long cycle. It's 10 minutes long of continuous clean and presses, and as I mentioned, with the 1 hour long cycle challenge, this is the movement that you will be repeating for an hour straight, either with one kettlebell or two. So you'll be doing this for either 15 minutes or 60 minutes. You're doing it for 15 if you're working in a team of 4. You're doing it for 60 minutes if you're working as an individual. The choice is yours. So this is the kettlebell long cycle here. Now, the other kettlebell sport exercise besides the long cycle is the jerk, which is you clean to your rack position here, and then for the entirety of a 10-minute set, you're jerking and trying to complete as many jerks as is possible in that 10-minute long set. So that's your kettlebell jerk. The last movement is the kettlebell snatch. So again, you're going to start with the bell down on the ground. When you're initiating your set, the countdown timer goes down, boom, you start your set, you go from the low position to the overhead position with the kettlebell snatch. So those are your three main competitive lifts for kettlebell sport. Again, the long cycle, the jerk, and the snatch. In the kettlebell sport world, these are done for 10-minute increments. As it pertains to what we're training for today, the 1 hour long cycle challenge, either a 15-minute interval or an hour interval, we're going to be working technique. So we're looking at working on our hand insertion drill. So the hand insertion, what you want to do is find either a brave soul to stand in front of you or a dummy, pun intended, like a punching bag to mark distance, or you can use a wall depending on how comfortable you are. For the advanced lifters that are watching, you know this drill, you're going to want to use a wall. For the novice lifters, who's this may be your first time using a kettlebell, you're going to want to use something like a punching bag or a person that can move out of the way with your swings. So you're just going to mark yourself about 1 arm's length away from whatever that implement is that you choose to use. So I'm going to be 1 arm's distance away, and I'm going to have the kettlebell set down in between my feet here. The reason why we set ourselves 1 arm distance away from this implement here is that it's going to force us to do something called deflection. Now, deflection is essentially leaning back as the kettlebell comes up to our swing position here. So what we're going to do is we're going to lean back, and at that point in time, as I lean back, the kettlebell and the momentum in the kettlebell is going to be shifting back. So as the kettlebell starts to float back with my deflection, I'm going to seize that opportunity to aggressively do a hand insertion drill. So with the hand insertion, it's very important that as the bell starts to rotate and start to travel back, you punch your hand through and keep your wrist rigid. You want to keep the wrist rigid and locked in this position. You don't want to have any breaking in the wrist. If your wrist breaks in the movement with the insertion, what will end up happening is that the kettlebell will swing over top of your hand and impact your wrist with greater force than if you were to keep your wrist rigid and locked in place, whereby then you can slide your hand in and lessen the impact of the kettlebell on the back of the wrist. So if your wrist breaks, the impact will be much greater from the kettlebell. It ends up looking like a lantern swing as opposed to an actual hand insertion. So we want to avoid this motion here and get into sliding the hand in as if it was a shark's fin cresting the water. So we want to get that kind of idea of inserting our hand aggressively. So just on the ground here, what I'm looking for is to avoid this movement in the kettlebell here. I want to avoid the kettlebell flipping onto the back of my wrist. I want to think of inserting my hand into the handle. So I'm shooting my hand through that kettlebell handle and travel my index finger to the base of the heel of my palm. So the handle is going to bisect my hand on a 45-degree angle and cuts my hand in half on a 45-degree angle here. So what this will look like in practice is like this. I'm going to grab the bell, I'm going to deadlift into position here. I'm going to mark my distance so that I'm exactly one arm away from the punching bag. Initially, to start building momentum, I'm going to start with a swing until I can get the kettlebell up to about shoulder height. So as you can see, I'm exactly one arm's distance away from the kettlebell. In order to avoid hitting the punching bag, I'm going to lean back on my right shoulder here. So I'm leaning back to create distance and separation from the punching bag between the kettlebell and the punching bag. If I do not lean back and get this deflection, this is what happens. I hit the kettlebell on the bag. So without the deflection present, I end up actually impacting the punching bag. So with deflection, you can see that I create distance between the bottom of the kettlebell and the punching bag. The second thing is that by leaning back and getting that distance, the momentum of the kettlebell now shifts toward my center of mass. So the kettlebell center of mass and my center of mass through deflection start to combine. So as the kettlebell starts to travel closer to me, I'm able to manipulate that implement very, very easily. So with the kettlebell traveling closer to my center of mass, or a better way to say that is, with the center of mass of the kettlebell traveling towards my center of mass, and our two centers of mass combining, it will allow me to better manipulate this implement. So, for example, lighter kettlebell. If I take the kettlebell here and extend it out here, and I try to manipulate it, it's going to be a lot tougher for me to turn and rotate and continue to do so over time with my arm at full length. It's a lot easier for me to take this center of mass of the kettlebell, bring it closer to my center of mass, and now rotate and move and manipulate the kettlebell with greater ease in this position and for a longer period of time. For those of you in the audience, again, this being the Summer Olympics, we can see this in actual play with judo. With our Olympic judo competitors, you can see that when they engage and they go to grab on and initiate contact with another player, their opposition, they're a lot less likely to be able to affect that other player, that other judo player out here at the extent of their arms. Judo players are trying to get close. They want to pull into a clinch and get their opposition closer to them so that they can manipulate them better and toss them to the ground and score points. So again, out here I'm fighting, I'm grappling, I'm trying to throw the bell or do whatever I want to do with it. If I can bring the bell's center of mass to my center of mass, I now have a greater opportunity to affect change in position with that kettlebell. So that's essentially what we're doing is, with our deflection, we're looking at taking the center of mass of the kettlebell, bringing it closer to our center of mass, and telling the kettlebell where exactly we want it to go. So with the flexion, I can change the path of the kettlebell to a clean position in the rack, or I can take it to an overhead position with a snatch. The deflection remains the same and is an essential component to both the snatch or the clean motion. So again, I'm gonna mark myself one arm's length away from the punching bag. I'm gonna squat, I'm gonna pick up my kettlebell, I'm gonna swing, I'm gonna get that deflection going, and then I'm gonna practice that hand insertion. So I'm exaggerating the movement and pausing for longer than I want to with that hand insertion, so you can see as I lean back, the bell floats onto my wrist. So by keeping my wrist rigid, you see the bell just sits pretty on the backside of my forearm. Conversely, if I break my wrist, you can see this kind of thing starting to happen, where the kettlebell wants to swing into the gap in my forearm and over top of my knuckles, or you get this lantern effect going on where you're impacting your wrist, as opposed to keeping my wrist rigid and getting that clean insertion, and then bringing the kettlebell into the rack position for the clean. So the initial drill, once again, is just a simple hand insertion, and what you saw at the tail end was the clean drill. So again, hand insertion is just consistent swinging for 5 minutes and getting hand insertion. The 3-in-1 clean is 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna clean, and then what we're also practicing today is a rack hold for 1 minute. So after you've completed your clean, you're going to sit in your rack for 1 minute. This, with a long cycle, is your rest position. This is where you get the opportunity to rest. Your second position for rest with a long cycle is in the overhead position. So the difference between the two positions, being in rack and being overhead, is that in an overhead position, I have the opportunity to fully expand my lungs. So I can stretch out and breathe in, breathe out. So I can get more volume of air into my lungs in an overhead position versus having weight down in the rack position where my lungs are compressed. So here, I'm looking at bringing the kettlebell close to my center of mass. So from the front, you can see I've got the kettlebell close to my center of mass, and I'm looking at relaxing and breathing through my belly. So I want to have a Buddha belly and breathe diaphragmatically. So I want to limit the amount of breathing in my chest and breathe through this Buddha belly. So from here, breathe out, breathe in, 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 breathe out. So you can see my belly moving in and out as I'm breathing, as opposed to being a chest dominant breather where I'm. So when you breathe through your chest in this plane here, so from the side, you can see my elbow. If I do chest breathing, it's a lot of activity in your rib cage. It's essentially like doing mini presses, which is going to fatigue your shoulder. If you can relax, keep your chest down and compressed in this position here, and concentrate on your belly, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. Now, you limit the amount of activity that's going on in your chest, and you take away any kind of energy leak or waste from having the bell on your chest and doing those repetitions, those mini reps. So again, the drill, the second drill, is kettlebell clean to rack. You're doing 3 swings, 1 clean, resting in the rack position for 1 minute. After you've finished the entirety of your workout, then you're gonna go out for a 12-minute jog and flush. So it's 5 minutes of hand insertion, 10 minutes of the rack, I believe, or 12 minutes of the clean and rack holds, and then you're out for a 12-minute run to finish off. All in all, the workout finishes today in under an hour. Again, the idea behind the design of the program today is to help introduce new lifters like yourselves to kettlebell one-arm long cycle. These are are the building blocks: hand insertion, and then a clean and rack holder. So this will help to lay the foundation en route to our 1 hour long cycle challenge, which again, you can participate in as a team of 4, where you're doing 4 15-minute increments, or as an individual lifting 1 bell or 2 bells. So again, check it out. Kettlebells for Autism is the website that you want us to check into. And it's a 1 hour long cycle challenge. Kettlebells for Autism is the name of the group that is behind, or the company that is behind this initiative. Again, obviously, I'm passionate about this cause. I like kettlebells, I enjoy lifting them. I hope after this brief video, you too start to look at incorporating kettlebells into your training regimen. It's a great way to burn a shit ton of calories. It's a great way also to start introducing Olympic lifting into your programming for those of you that want to get into Olympic lifting, but are a little bit nervous about touching a barbell. This is a great alternative to a barbell. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your Saturday to sit here and listen to me yap about fitness, which I'm obviously passionate about. Hopefully it's a passion for you guys too. If not, I hope it starts to become a passion in your life. And remember, it's not about perfect performance, it's about optimizing performance specific to you. So remember to like, share, and comment down below. Let's get stronger together. Deuces up, do the damn deed. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, y'all.